So today on Free Field Training, I figured it would be fun to take some comments and questions from the other YouTube videos on the channel. I know lots of people leave comments on the YouTube videos. They ask questions all the time, and unfortunately the channel's gotten large enough, or maybe fortunately the channel's gotten large enough that I can't always answer all of those questions in those YouTube comment sections. So I'm going to take some of the top ones that I get asked most, or which I think are funniest. We're going to answer those today, and they're going to take some comments and questions from the YouTube live stream. Also, Olight has a sale going on right now for Breast Cancer Awareness Month. They've got this little rechargeable keychain light. It recharges through a USB slot that you twist to open and get to the slot. And if you tighten it down, it comes on and it's pretty bright. These are like $15 on their sale. There's going to be a link for that down in the description if you're interested in this type of thing. Ordinarily, when companies talk to me about sending me flashlights that don't make any sense for police work, I go, yeah, you go pound sand, or we'll throw them in the police equipment giveaway, which, by the way, should be next week, as long as I get all the stuff in for the giveaway next week. So stick around for that. I'm going to be giving that away live, giving a bunch of stuff away live on Instagram, and then you're going to get a chance to enter to win the other stuff on the YouTube video. If you're interested in this, $15, links down in the description. I don't make any money off of that. It's just they're doing a sale for charity, so I figured, screw it. Let everybody know about it. There's also a link on my Facebook page to it if you want more information, and all the particulars are also down below. So let's get into some questions from recent YouTube videos, or that have recently come up on YouTube videos, and then we will take comments and questions from the YouTube live stream. We've got 50, 60 people on here right now. I get a lot of questions on YouTube about background testing and about getting jobs as cops or security guards. So there's a bunch of those that I screenshotted here. We're going to take first, kind of as a primer, till we get some comments that are good up on the YouTube live. First one is from Want to Be a Cop, drug testing and disqualifiers. And this is from Ashley, and Ashley says, fun fact, if you bleach your hair to the point of death, it can damage your hair beyond testing. Okay, lots of people comment about ways to game the drug test, and here's what you need to understand about that. Police departments can and will disqualify you from testing for doing any type of goofy thing to game the test. People will say, well, I'm going to just shave all the hair off my body. Okay, then you're disqualified if you can't take the hair test. You need hair to take the test. Come back in 2 weeks when you have hair, and we will cut some off and we will test it. Otherwise, you're not moving on. And at big agencies, they will just be like, listen, you shaved your whole body to get around taking this hair test. Obviously, you've been doing narcotics, so you're out of luck. In that same vein, we get on the top pursuit driving tips, which everybody really seemed to like. We're doing another video on pursuit driving tips coming up in the next few weeks. I've already shot it. I've got to edit it up. Stick around for all of that. Follow me on YouTube, subscribe, and hit that bell notification so you get it when it comes out. So on the last pursuit driving tips, Rishi says, let's get down to the nitty-gritty. And of course, it's not going to be about pursuit driving because he's asking a question and he prefaces that. He says, the department I applied to has a DQ of USA. I'm assuming he means use. I can let that one slide totally because me and spell check don't get along really well either. Of cocaine in the last 10 years. I've experimented with it for the first time back in 2016. Hated it. How likely is it that they will overlook that and give me a chance? Very, 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 very unlikely. If a department has a policy about people they're hiring and the use of hard drugs, heroin, cocaine, crack, MDMA, they're probably not going to sidestep it because you're a nice guy. I know that's a thing that like people expect after college, is that people are going to bend the rules for them because they're nice people. Nobody cares about that in the real world, especially not for a government job. There are plenty of people probably lining up for that job, and they would rather have somebody that didn't do cocaine. They're just going to stick with that policy. Now, if it's a really small rural sheriff's department and you know the sheriff, that might be different. You have some political juice, that might be different. But if you're just Joe Blow off the street, in all likelihood, they're going to tell you to go pound sand. Sorry. On modern police duty belt, the Scottish Panda says, I think you should have a panic button on your shoulder mic. It would be easier for you to reach up to your mic instead of reaching behind you and pressing a small circle on the big radio with all the knobs and the antenna on it. Nobody actually uses panic buttons. I've never once heard of an instance where somebody used a panic button where they weren't actually like panicking and falling apart and didn't know what else to do. And I've never practiced using the panic button. I don't know why I would want to use the panic button. It's kind of, even mentioning the panic button on a video about my duty belt and my radio is just kind of a little bit of a joke as far as I'm concerned. So, I don't know. I guess I might use it if it was on the shoulder mic and I had it center line on my body right here. It might be something where I'm like, well, I don't have time to yell on the radio, but I can hit this button. But here's the thing is that if I'm going into an incident where I feel bad enough that I have to use the panic button, it would have to be a circumstance where I literally was physically unable to talk, like my throat was slit or something. Because the panic button where I'm at, what it does is it chirps out a panic notification to the whole agency, and it allows no one to get on the radio. So it just like, it clicks over the top of everybody else. So whatever problem I had would likely get worse if I used the panic button where I was at. So I don't know, maybe that's not how it works everywhere. This is the only place that I've ever worked that had a panic button. Everywhere else was private businesses that they didn't use a panic button for anything really. So I don't know. Maybe it works different other places. Maybe it's important other places. But here, it just doesn't make sense to use the panic button, so I'm not worried about it. So on note-taking for Police and Security Part 1, remastered. If you haven't watched that video, you probably should at some point in the future. Officer Wagner says, hello. I'm a security officer. This is the great information, but some of the cops in my town where I'm at call me a rent-a-cop. Is there anything I can do to change this? I don't want to feel unwanted when I'm in law enforcement as well. We should all stick together and not put each other down because security is law enforcement too. Okay, so there's a lot to unpack there. One, don't take yourself too seriously. You're a security guard, and if you don't take yourself too seriously, other people won't make fun of you for taking yourself too seriously. So that's some advice, I think. That's useful for everybody's job, right? Two, people are going to call you rent-a-cop if you're a security guard. Right? That'd be like me asking, how can I get people to stop calling me pig when I'm at work? Guess what? They're going to. Because I'm short, I'm fat, I'm fair-skinned, a little bit of red complexion there, right? Prickly hair all over, and I'm a cop. And that's what they're going to do. You can't do anything about what people are going to say about you. All you can do is lessen the number of people that say that because they respect you. But most people aren't if you're a security guard or a cop, so you should probably get used to it or find another line of work, to be completely honest with you. And finally, you're not in law enforcement. It's not what you do for a living. You're a security guard. And let me break that down for you real simply. Security's job is to do the same things a manager could do if they had the time and inclination. They unpack a small portion of what the business is allowed to do, and they allow you to do it in the vast, overwhelming majority of places. Now, someone is going to click on and be like, well, in southwestern Carolina, where I'm at, in this county, they have an ordinance that allows us to arrest people for trespassing on our own, and then we call the sheriff, and he comes and picks... Yeah, great. You can arrest people for trespass. You're not in law enforcement, okay? And in many, 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 many states, if you tell someone, you say you're in law enforcement, it's actually illegal if you're not. So you may want to tone that down a little bit when talking with those cops. Hey, here's a thought. Maybe watch a bunch of the videos about how to interact with law enforcement that I have on Free Field Training here, or just take yourself a lot less seriously, right? Get yourself a name tag that says, what's Joe Wagner or whatever your name is, Guard Wagner, right? Or get a name tag that just says sir, big enough where people can read it. Make a little conversation starter out of the uniform in a way that's not going to get you in trouble. And maybe when you talk to cops in your town, like, give a wave, like, hey, how's it going? And that's it. Instead of telling us about how some guy trespassed 3 weeks ago and you got in an argument with him. Because I'm going to tell you something, a lot of people do that. Most of the time we don't care. So that's everything that I pulled up as primers for today's video. Now we're going to go to the YouTube live stream here and see if anybody has anything interesting to say. Before we do that, it is time for a break. So, if you got any comments or questions, put them in there now. We'll give you a second. Then we're gonna start taking them, man. Java Wave coffee from the gas station, pretty terrible. Pretty terrible. So we're gonna feed the troll here. The Eagle is spamming with, "Are you a real cop?" Yes, Google me. Thanks. Now I'm gonna go to the top. We're gonna take the comments and questions, as many as I can, before my wife starts calling me and screaming about how I'm not home for dinner. Two Guys Talking Podcast Network says, getting pretty furry there, officer. Maybe a little. Jim and Wilson says, what's the most chases you've been in a shift? Like a car chase? I want to say 3. And that's a pretty unusual circumstance, but I want to say 3. And that's depending on if you count chasing the same car repeatedly as different chases or one chase, right? So if you were to say get in a chase with a car at 9 a.m. because it gets stolen, and then get in a chase with that same car because it's used in a carjacking to chase another car because you were forced to terminate the pursuit on the first one, so then they use that car that they just straight stole because it had the keys in it to carjack somebody else, and then you got terminated from that, so later in the day you chased the same car because it was fleeing from the scene of a shooting, and then you finally got the guys because that one stuck. Would that be 3 chases or just one continuation of the same chase? I don't know. It gets silly here sometimes. DFuzz Enabled says, what's the best open carry holster company in your opinion? I've tried a bunch of the new duty holsters that are coming out, and until something, live can't edit that out. Until something radically better than what I've been seeing, and I'm not saying there's nothing better out there, I'm just saying what I've been seeing comes out, I'm going to have to go with Safariland. Vanny Lowe says, what to do and not to do in an oral board. I have a scheduled one next week. I actually have a whole video on the channel about taking the police oral board. If you search in my channel, police interview will come up. There's lots of good advice in there. At least I think it's good advice. And that's all the advice that I have for you. If you have further questions on it, you can you can DM me on Instagram or send me an email or leave a comment on this video. And if it's good enough, maybe I can, if it's not covered in some other video, I'll try to respond as best I can. George Santana says, what tips do you have to pass the written portion? I probably should make a separate video about that all on its own. I'll try to give you the Cliff Notes versions here, but if you would send me a DM on Instagram or on an email, that'd be great so I can remember to make that. But basically, the written test is simple. Depending on where you're at, it's no different than any other standardized test you're going to get. So if you did any good on standardized tests in high school, you're probably going to do well on the written evaluation for police department testing. Get a good night's sleep the night before. Get up in the morning. If you drink coffee, have yourself 1 cup of coffee. Don't get all jittery. But have yourself a cup of coffee. Get some oatmeal or something that's going to sit in your stomach to keep you satiated throughout the portion of the test. When you show up to the written test, unless they tell you you're going to take the physical fitness the same day, wear a nice shirt and tie, maybe a suit. Come in. If they tell you to bring a pencil, bring 4 pencils, right? Bring 2 for you and 2 for other goofballs who forgot their pencils. And I'll tell you something, the people that work at these places, sometimes they notice that type of stuff. But other than that, there's not a whole lot else you can do. There's nothing, you can't really test for it. There's companies out there that make books to help you test for the police written exam, and most of them are junk. It's no different than taking the ACT, the SAT, any type of standardized test. It's mostly general knowledge stuff. A couple places will have like memory game tests where it's like they show you a picture at the beginning of the test of a person. You have to pick that person out of a lineup at the end of the test. Shenanigans. Normally those things don't count for more points than the question about simple arithmetic earlier in the test, so I wouldn't worry about them too much. You're either going to do well or you're not. My suggestion with those tests, though, is when you're starting off your testing process for a police department, test a whole bunch of places. Get experience with the tests. Any place you might want to work at some point in the future, just test at it. Matt Nichols says, I see you occasionally in real life off duty. Was curious how comfortable you were with people approaching you and saying hi. Listen, I'm just a normal guy, right? Most of my YouTube videos are done literally, like the whiteboard on the videos, that's my garage. My studio is 6 inches off the edge of the garage, right? You see me driving around in my car or taking my kid to gymnastics or whatever, just say hi. Hi, Tommy. And if I go, oh, who the hell are you? You're like, oh, I know you from YouTube. I'm like, oh, cool, thanks. That's it. I'm not, nothing special. I'm just a cop that does goofy videos on the internet. Come say hi. Not a big deal. If I'm busy, I'll let you know. Actually, John Dre Recorder says, can I have your old gear? No. I get anything that's still serviceable, either give away to people at work or I have on the police gear giveaways every month. Hello from Tennessee. Hello from Illinois. Two Guys Talking says, is becoming a cop at this point a huge integrity-based thing since the onset of the hate the cops to fund the police crap? Well, here's the thing, is that this stuff goes in cycles, right? You remember a few years ago, the teachers were the bad people, and then it was the cops were the bad people. They always do tend to come back to cops, I'm gonna be honest with you, but we're an easy target. Nobody likes getting a ticket. Nobody likes going to jail. I understand completely. I understand why people don't like us. It's fine. And sometimes you're like, well, hey, we just realized we need cops. And then, 6 months later, people are like, I hate the police. Now we're on to hating doctors, which is, oh my God. There's like a parallel universe in 2020. People hating doctors. Put in hashtag ADAB. You will lose your mind at the level of stupidity people have. Like, I'm sure, just like every other profession, just like I say about police work, there's some bad doctors out there, but I really don't think there's that many that are that bad. I really don't think that's true. So it ebbs and flows. Honestly, getting the job today, the people that we have coming into it are, they're coming into it for the same reason I came into it 15 years ago, and the same reason, guys are coming into it 40, 50 years ago, right? They want excitement. They want to feel like they're doing something with their life. All of those core essentials that people come into the job for, that's the same reason they're coming in now. There may be a lot fewer people coming in now, though. We got a lot of people for many, many years that were in this because, it's a good job, and I think it's going to be easy. And then they get in and they're like, well, maybe I'll do a few years. And then they get stuck. I know lots of guys are like that. They get stuck in the job, and they feel like they're stuck because they couldn't go make more money somewhere else. Well, for those of us who could go make more money doing something else, heck, I can make more now working in the private security industry with my background than I can staying on my job. And the reason I stay on my job is because I like it and because I'm vested in the pension and I want that pension. You got to look at the long game with money. But, if I wanted to make more money, I can make more money going somewhere else. But there's a lot of people that aren't in that situation. They couldn't make more money doing something else. And so they're stuck. And I think that's where you get bad cops. Mostly is from people like that. And so maybe it's a good thing that we're getting fewer people like that taking the test. Timothy Branter says, what can you tase people for? Well, you can tase people for just about anything, but you shouldn't. So there's been lots of case law in the last few years. Tasers, when I started on the job, they had just come out. They were a brand new thing. We didn't have many of them at work. We definitely didn't have one for everybody. And it was looked at like OC spray. You could use them even on passive resistors, which is people that just like fold their arms and sit on the floor and say, I'm not going to jail. And now it's looked at more at a level of like a baton, like hitting somebody with a riot baton. Like, you've got to have a really good reason to be tasing somebody. But it definitely at least an active resistor. And you're going to want, if you're using a taser on somebody, there needs to be a risk of injury by that person's behavior or the circumstances that person's putting everyone in. And that's kind of the Cliff Notes versions. But if you're issued a taser at work, I cannot strongly recommend enough. You need to go to the taser school. You have to be certified in it. And you should be tased with it if you're medically capable of doing that, which most people are. And you need to tape up on the case law with tasers because it's very complex. Ranchero says, does having an EMT or paramedic certification hold weight with a police department? No, not generally. Some places will require that you keep EMT certification. A very few places do public safety departments where their paramedics, their firefighters, and their cops are all the same people, and they rotate them on like a yearly or bi-yearly schedule so that you never get bogged down in one job. You never get burnt out for it, which is probably a smart move. And some places require that everyone that works on anywhere in public safety has at least an EMT certification and keeps that. So they basically have to go take the class every year, every couple of years, depending on the state. But as far as getting the job, I've never really seen anywhere that like preferenced being a paramedic for being a cop. However, if you're already a paramedic, I highly recommend going and being a paramedic. That's a really good job. And if you already know you're good at that, and it pays about the same, plus there's private sector paramedic jobs that pay very, very well. You should look into those. Kevin Pearson says, what are your experiences with motorcycle officers, and do you have any information on how to become one, and do you think that you can get one for a Q&A video? All right, so I might be able to get a guy that used to do motors for a Q&A. I can try. I can ask him. No guarantees. And no guarantees. You think I'm long-winded, you should hear him. But I'll try. So motors, we don't really use them where I'm at anymore. Most places are phasing motors out for everything except ceremonial purposes. Motorcycles are a great tool. They're a very convenient tool. Where I'm at, we use ATVs for a lot of the same purposes because the certification's a lot easier on an ATV. You don't have to worry about the high-speed stuff, the low-speed maneuvers, all of that. It's just basically like ride the ATV without killing yourself and then use it to do things like ATVs and motorcycles are great for directing traffic. They're great for motorcades and stuff like that, but they come with a very serious risk of injury. And so most places are phasing them out, and they're phasing them out quick. If you get into an accident on a motorcycle, it doesn't matter how big that motorcycle is. A Prius versus a Boss Hoss the Boss Hoss is still going to lose, right? A Prius versus, a Honda Goldwing is still going to lose badly. And cops get hurt more when they're on motors and get into accidents than when they're in almost anything else and get in accidents. It would be great if there was some sort of hybrid vehicle that was easier to license down the road than an ATV, but still had the ability to lane split like a motorcycle. We really don't have that. I know motorcycles are huge in Europe, but liability and insurance is kind of killing off the motor officer in most of the U.S. I know not everywhere, but in most of the U.S., it's kind of killing the motor officer off. I don't see them just riding around anymore anywhere in Illinois. I can't remember the last time I saw someone outside of a funeral on a motorcycle, like working the street. Hello from Sweden. Hello from Chicago. Corey Smith says, hi, I'm in the early process of the hiring process. What should I expect on the written test or for the written test? You should expect it to be a normal like ACT, SAT, any standardized test that you would take. Lots of places just use the normal public employment testing. It's nothing special. Imagine taking the ACT again, but dumber, basically. Dalen Cartwright is asking about, Dalen Cartwright says, my dad used it during Pulse. I think he's talking about the emergency button, the panic button on the radio. Sure. Maybe he did. Maybe it helped. Maybe it made it worse. I don't know. All I know is about the way those things work where I'm at. I have said before on the channel, I use the radio. I'm not a radio guy. Just like a lot of cops, like people say all the time, just cops don't know anything about guns. No, most cops don't know anything about guns that aren't the guns that they use at work because they're not into guns. And most cops are not into any type of cars. They're into other stuff. Well, I'm into guns and I'm into cars, but I'm not into radios. So people start talking their radio jibber jabber. I'm like, listen, I know how to use this well enough to use it and use it well. But you start talking about fixing it and how it works and the technical aspects of it, I don't know. So maybe there, it worked really well. Where I'm at, I think it would probably make the situation worse. AJ Johnson said, should I become a Chicago cop? Probably not. Just about everybody I talk to who's a Chicago cop right now is trying to find a job somewhere else. Hi, Michael. Good luck. Good luck getting that suburb job. Jackson says, how do you feel about enforcing unconstitutional laws? Well, I don't. Everybody has their beliefs on what's legal and illegal and constitutional and not constitutional. Even Supreme Court justices can't agree on what those are. But I can't think there's very many people that are out there who are going, oh, that's totally illegal. I'm going to do that. I'll give you, for instance, personally, I don't think that we should be having checkpoints on roads for things. And a lot of people disagree. And courts have almost universally said that we can have DUI checkpoints because DUIs are such an exigent problem in our community. However, where I'm at, I look around and I go, hey, we maybe have one person die a year in my little hamlet from a DUI, but we have maybe 8 to 15 people a year that are like stabbed to death or shot to death or, pick your instrument of death. So if we're looking at the overall damage that's involved, then we got to look at the gunfire damage, just that the amount of money and injury, people getting injured by gunfire. It's 4 or 5 people a month getting injured by gunfire. So just in my little experience, just the calls that I'm going on, I look at it and go, well, you mean I can't have a checkpoint for guns and knives and all this crazy stuff that would cause people to actually get hurt, that I'm seeing every day causing people to get hurt, but we can have them for DUI. Oh, so having them for DUI is just a political expediency because there's lots of money behind movements to stop drunk driving, Mothers Against Drunk Driving and stuff like that. Oh, okay. So it is probably just something we shouldn't do, but we're going to carve out an exception for it because of money? No, I'm not doing it. So we have these things called overtime details where Mothers Against Drunk Driving and other organizations pay us to go out and have a DUI checkpoint. And I don't work them. Because I don't think we should have like a checkpoint on the side of the road that you have to drive through to try to like ensnare people for a whole bunch of stuff. I don't think that's right. I don't think it's something we do, so I don't do it. And luckily, I don't have to do it because it's an overtime detail. I've never had the circumstance where they were like, you have to go do this DUI checkpoint. Like it's not how that works. It's all extra money. And I'm not motivated by the money enough to compromise my principles, so I don't do that. Other people think all drug laws are an infringement. Other people think all gun laws are an infringement. Well, if that's what they believe, then I would hope that they wouldn't be out enforcing those things. But I don't strictly believe those things, right? Like, I think maybe violent felons shouldn't have stolen guns, and when they do, that should be a sentence enhancer. That's just me being crazy, right? That's the crazy super liberal, right? I mean, like, if you know me in real life, you know that's not me, right? But on the internet, it's weird because in real life, I'm pretty far right. But on the internet, people think I'm some sort of leftist weirdo because I'm like, hey, well, maybe we shouldn't. Maybe not all gun laws are infringements. Maybe the violent felons really shouldn't have guns after they've been convicted a couple of times, right? Like, no, that's terrible. They've served their time. I'm like, I disagree, right? So we can agree to disagree on those things. But if I personally felt the law was unconstitutional, I wouldn't enforce it. And if I thought something was immoral or unconstitutional, I wouldn't do it. And luckily, I'm allowed to do that. Because I have this thing that I get to do at work that I really like to do called whatever I feel like. Discretion. It's beautiful. Ross Boy says, how many years of military experience would I need to have a chance at joining a federal agency? 0. You don't need military experience to join a federal agency. It's just that simple. If you do, it could help, especially if you're going to get a job with the VA. Being prior military really helps there, but in most cases, it's not really a big thing. I wouldn't worry about it. Ooh, Eric Mitchell says, what sort of things do you look for when in other people's houses/apartments, like in domestics, either officer safety concerns or evidence of bigger crimes taking place? That's a good one. We should do a whole video on that. Again, you should DM me that on Instagram or send me an email so I remember. So we go into houses on domestics. Obviously, I'm not like people all the time. You get into domestic and they go, he's got weed. It's over there. It's in the shooter. I don't care about his weed. I barely care about his weed like when I'm there because somebody called about the weed. I really don't care in the middle of the domestic, especially since it's legal in Illinois now. Like, that's not what I'm there for, right? So a few things we got to keep an eye out for. You got guns laying around, knives laying around, baseball bats. A lot of the times these are all stored behind the door, behind the couch. So you got to be careful about people going behind the door, going behind the couch. And if I walk through a door, I look behind it to make sure there isn't a gun behind it, right? Knowledge of terrain type of thing. On any call, we try to keep a lookout for signs of larger offenses going on. Sometimes domestics, especially if you notice there's a huge difference in like an age gap, or it seems like a weird coupling of people, and I'll explain a little bit on that in a second. You have to watch out for human trafficking. So if you get a domestic, let's say very often at hotels, and there's like 2 white guys that speak perfect English, and they're having an argument with a girl that appears to only speak Mandarin, or only speaks Russian, speaks very little English, very thick Polish accent. You go get her ID, and she's from out of state. I mean, around here, it's mostly they'll have an ID from Wisconsin. For some reason, it must be easier to get an ID in Wisconsin. Or they'll have in Illinois what's called a TVDL, a temporary visitor's driver's license. You can get a driver's license here if you're not in the country illegally. If you're not in the country legally, you can still get a driver's license in Illinois. So you have to watch out for those things because that can be signs of human trafficking. No, it could just be somebody's mail order bride or, mother-in-law in from out of town or something like that. But if you've got like a 45-year-old dude who sounds like he's from Gary, Indiana, and he's with a 19-year-old Polish chick that speaks very little English, and her driver's license is out of Wisconsin, and I'm in Illinois, that's a big red flag about human trafficking. So we've picked up a couple cases like that and had to pass them along to the feds for human trafficking issues, but that's a big one. If you sometimes you'll get called into a really, 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 really big criminal enterprise. People moving a kilo weight of cocaine or heroin. Get a kilo weight, like levels of fentanyl. You can get that sometimes off. It's not very common with domestics because most people are smart enough to know that, especially their girlfriends are smart enough to know that if they call the police and for a domestic and the boyfriend is holding for the cartel, that there's a really good chance that her, him, the dog, the neighbors, and the guy that sold her that cell phone are all going to end up dead. So they don't tend to do that. That's like a lot of movie stuff. Sometimes you get people who are kind of like more independent dudes that are holding. We'll get an alarm call off at the house and get there, and it's just the door's open. People are lazy. They slam the door behind them and don't lock it, and you end up getting inside and being like, oh, why are all these scales and packaging, and holy crap, there's 35 kilos of cocaine in this house. Well, that's interesting. And that's normally either a case of you walked onto something big or the FBI is trying to see if you're dirty. I can't think any more right off the top of my head, but those are two big ones that I've run across in 15 years on the job. Daniel Erickson says, hello from Des Moines, Iowa, formerly a one-time resident of Evergreen Park, Illinois. Oh, Evergreen Park! The land where young women just walk the streets randomly in the middle of the night. Evergreen Park is a very weird place. Ben Cunningham says, the panic button only works when you don't want it to. When I was in the fire service, we'd accidentally hit it all the time, but never could when it was actually needed. Yeah, ours go off all the time, and I've never actually needed it for anything. And it's really annoying when it goes off. On our radios, you have to shut the radio off, turn it back on in order to even answer that the panic's going off and what's going on. So not really helpful for me. Stephen S. says, how do you feel about cops doing unconstitutional stuff like arresting normal people for defending themselves, such as in riots, etc.? Well, that's not, like I said, it's obviously they don't think it's the wrong thing. Otherwise, they wouldn't be doing that. And I put that on that person. They think that's the right thing to do. There's a whole huge spectrum of what people think is right and wrong and constitutional and legal and not. And like I said, even the attorneys, even Supreme Court justices do not agree on what those things are. That's why we have a whole legal process. And lots of times, and I've had this before personally, you go put the habeas corpus on somebody because it looks like they were just battering some other guy, right? So you put the habeas corpus on them, and then 20 witnesses come out and they're like, whoa, no. And you're like, all right, what? No. He was defending that guy against that one. He had a knife earlier. That guy took the knife away, and that guy was pummeling him, trying to keep him from going back. Oh, I see now. But when I take the initial action, that's pretty much all there's ever somebody videoing, and that's all you're going to see on the internet. You don't see what happened before. You don't see, from my perspective, what I'm seeing when I'm rolling up on the ridiculousness that's going on in the street. You don't see the follow-up on the investigation. Because someone gets handcuffs put on them, and even because somebody gets handcuffs put on them, stuffed in a car, and driven off to the station, doesn't mean they're ever charged with a crime. I have had circumstances where I've handcuffed somebody, stuffed them in the car, and driven them to the station for no other reason than getting them away from the ridiculousness that was going on. There's 100 people out there, and they're all hell-bent on beating this one guy up. Grab him, he's all drunk, probably did God knows what before he got there. Lots of the job of the police is just to take a situation and squash it so that we can do the investigation later and figure out how to solve it long term. That's called community caretaking. Drock860 says, as a teenager wanting to be a cop, where should I start? Well, if you're 16, 17, or 18, stay in school. If you're 19, you should be going to college, in the military, or getting a very good age-appropriate job, as high level of a job as you want. You want to be on a management track somewhere. The best thing to do to open the broadest number of horizons for yourself in law enforcement is to go to college and get a bachelor's degree. Please, not in criminal justice. Anything but in criminal justice, but get a bachelor's degree. Maybe take a couple of criminal justice classes, or minor. How about minor in criminal justice? Instead of majoring in it, maybe major in business, minor in criminal justice, major in accounting, minor in criminal justice if you have to. That's the way that's going to open the most opportunities up to you. Second down from that, going to the military. That's going to open other opportunities for you throughout life and give you a lot of experience, which a lot of places really like. But there's going to be fewer opportunities just because of entry-level requirements in a lot of places. And then finally, if you're not going to go in the military and you're not going to go to school, you need to have a job. You need to start laying down some job experience so that when you're 21, 22, 23, you can apply for the jobs that don't require college or a military background and be able to come into them with the experience to go to those oral interviews and give a good explanation as to why they should hire you as a cop. And Officer Wagner's on here asking the same question. I actually answered that earlier on, man. Don't take yourself so seriously, okay? Don't take yourself so seriously. Life's not that serious. Nobody's making it out alive. Remington 3426 says, hello, I was wondering if you have a lot of overdoses where you're at. We had a rash of them when fentanyl first became a thing. Hold on, donut break time. Blood sugar was going down. So we had a rash of overdoses when fentanyl first became a thing. And by rash, I mean 10, 12 people dying, in on my shift, like in a month from overdosing in the McDonald's bathroom or the Walgreens bathroom. Now it's kind of settled down. We don't have as many, but there's still a lot more than there were when I started on the job, back when it was just heroin that was out there. And then Rich A right after says, fentanyl is in everything. Yeah, that's the problem. It's way too easy to overdose. Actually, fairly hard to overdose on heroin. It's really easy to overdose on fentanyl. Jake Hubbard says, do you have any recommendations for level 4 armor plates that are less expensive than Safe Life? I was recently added to our CDT, or Civil Disturbance Team, and our department doesn't provide the plates. I'd have to research into that. I mean, you'd be just as good at Googling as I would. I don't know anywhere. I think the Safe Life plates are like $180 right now for the in conjunction ceramic plates. And level 4, you're pretty much talking ceramic no matter what. I mean, I know there's level 4 mosaic, ceramic, heavy on the polyethylene plates. They're really, really expensive. That are out there. I'm not sure you're even going to find them for sale on the internet. I know they exist. There's lots of armor that exists, but it's just too expensive to go to market. I don't know what's cheaper than that. You could probably get a single tile ceramic plate that'll do the job, but I don't know off the top of my head what companies are selling those currently. For a while, you were able to get them surplus, so you may want to hit up some surplus stores and see if you can find any. But those monolithic ceramic plates, you find one at a surplus store, they normally have a cover on them. You want to like try to crinkle the edges and twist the plate. Don't like smash it, but try to twist the plate and listen and make sure it's not making crackling noises if you're going to buy it, because that means that it's cracked and it might not work properly. But I mean, I know they're out there. Most of them I think are going to be surplus is what's going to be cheaper. If anybody else knows, put a comment down in the comment section. Timothy Branter says, hey, can you tase people who are trespassing? Here, no. Not unless there's a lot more going on than just a trespass. I wouldn't do that. I mean, could you, if someone was trespassing, could you start beating them with a riot baton? Because that's what you're talking about doing. If you wouldn't do that, don't tase them. So Synergy says, do you have any recommendations for belts? In your previous video, Modern Police Duty Belt, you didn't recommend your current belt. I'm thinking of buying the Bianchi Ergotech belt. I haven't bought one yet, but a lot of people have suggested the Bianchi Ergotech belt. So that's going to be my next try. If you don't need a leather belt and you don't need basket weave or high gloss Clarion finish, Safe Life Defense makes an excellent nylon duty belt. You watch me lift a car up with it right here on YouTube Live. I can recommend those. There's lots of great nylon belts that have a Cobra buckle in the front. If you can use those, go for it. If you have to have leather, Boston leather makes a really good belt. If you don't have a problem with having like an actual like cow leather belt instead of something that's a polymer, Boston leather makes a good belt, and that's about it. I think I'm going to buy the Bianchi one next though. Two Guys Talking says, can you provide in-depth detail about why the donuts with peanuts are so hated? I don't know why those are even made. Does anybody actually eat those things? I don't know why they're so hated, but I don't like them. Mike says, thoughts on ASP flashlights. Hold on. So I got an ASP flashlight right here, actually. We just did the durability testing live on Instagram. You can see that now, and within a couple of weeks, I'm going to have the full review video of this flashlight out on the YouTube channel, so watch out for that. They're pretty cool. It's waterproof. I ran this over with my car a couple of times. Other than being dinged up, it's still in pretty good shape. They recharge. You twist the top off, and you just plug a USB into there, and it recharges. It gives you a little green light when it's fully charged and a red light when it's charging. And then when you unplug it and you're using it, you can periodically check it. You're like, oh, I wonder how much battery's left on my light. You can screw this open, push the button, and it'll tell you, here, you turn it on, it'll tell you how much battery's left. So it gives you a green when it's pretty close to fully charged, yellow when it's half, like it's 25%, and then red when, hey, dude, you need to charge this. It's pretty bright. It's got a really good throw for its size. I'm not so big on the clip, mostly because I don't ever clip this to my pocket. I'm thinking about taking the clip off. Once the video's out, take the clip off, because I use these in a pouch on my vest. But it's a pretty good light. They're expensive. They are expensive. They're not cheap, as any actual duty light should be. It's pretty pricey. I think this is $180 for the dual fuel one, the charger or battery one, but it's pretty good. I can actually recommend this a lot more than a lot of other brands. This is a legit duty light. I was really surprised to find out that it's waterproof with just this seal, but at least when it's new, you just drop this in a bucket of water with this sealed up and didn't have any problems. No water egress, took it apart, and nothing got inside. What do you think are the most, so Mike says, what do you think is the most effective use of social media for police departments and their surrounding citizens? As much as I dislike Facebook, I think Facebook is probably the best social media for police departments to use, because a lot of the people that are most worried about crime still use Facebook. Facebook's like the old person social media. Like, young people have Facebook, but they don't actually use Facebook. But people that are like my age and older, so in their mid 30s to 70 years old, they all have Facebook. They all like to go on. They make their little community watch groups, and I think that's really the area police departments should focus on. When they make an Instagram or a YouTube, they just get roasted. So there's no reason to deal with that. The biggest mistake I think police departments use, that police departments have, is they try to curate the comment section too much. Sorry. I think they try to curate the comment section too much, or they will blatantly just shut comments off. And the curating the comment section, like, I can understand if somebody's on there cursing and being crazy in the comment section. You don't want that on the police department's Facebook page. I can understand why an administrator would want to get rid of that. The problem I have is when people go on and they will have a legitimate gripe about a legitimate issue, and the people running the website or the city or whoever's doing it say, well, we don't want people to know that there's armed robberies happening on 147th Street. So we need to delete all those comments about the armed robbery on 147th Street. That's kind of silly. Like, people are there. If people are following your police department Facebook page or whatever social media, they want to know about what's going on in the community. So if you're not providing that, then why are they following you? You're not offering people something they can't get somewhere else. Which, if you're successful on social media, you're offering somebody something that they're not getting anywhere else. So I was one of the first cops to go on YouTube and be like, this is how police work works. And now there's a whole bunch of them, and they're much better at it. They give you something that I don't. But that's how I got started into this, and I think why people like the channel is they can get something here that they want that they can't get anywhere else. Well, if you're the Bartlesville, Kentucky Police Department, and people aren't finding out that there's a problem with burglaries in residential neighborhoods in Bartlesville, Kentucky, because you're deleting all those comments, then they're not getting the information that they want, and they can get the information that you're giving out probably from just about anywhere else. Nobody wants to know about, that your new squad cars are pink for Breast Cancer Awareness Month. They want to know about the crime in their community. Daryl Unpronounceable says, what is one thing you wish you'd known before getting into policing? I wish I'd known about coffee. I didn't discover coffee until after I was a cop, and I got really, really fat off of drinking Mountain Dew. This stuff is close to 0 calorie. That's a fantastic way to get caffeine. Fear My Rocket says, you smell like noodles. Well, you're better at the internet than me if you can smell me through the phone. Little B233 says, good advice for a person in the police academy, ? Be coachable. That's all they ask you to be. Also, show up ready to run. Most places want you to run a lot, and if you can't run, you're going to have a rough time of it. Cody DeVault says, what's your experience with probation officers in your area? Actually, a really good friend of mine is a probation officer right now. You've seen him on the channel before. Chris is a probation officer. He's the bearded guy that makes fun of things, a more bearded guy that makes fun of things oftentimes in the background of the armor shoot videos. It's just a job, you know, like he'll tell you we go out, we do paperwork all day, and that's pretty much it. So it's not super exciting, but it is a good gig. Remington 3426 says, does your department provide you with Narcan? Even though we are required by state law to carry it, no, can't get it. Fun fact. I don't know why. Two Guys Talking said, what is the most innovative piece of police gear you've seen in the last year? In the last year, probably Safe Life's FRAS. That's a new one. That's something I hadn't seen before. It's a flexible rifle armor, so it's like a whole vest made of rifle armor. A lot of the zip ties, the zip restraint companies have come a really long way. I don't know if it's in the last year, but in the last few years, zip cuffs used to be either just two big-ass zip ties, or they were this enormous contraption that had two zip ties that were linked in the middle at the heads, and now they're like folding zip cuffs. Mil-Spec Plastics makes folding zip cuffs that fold down to like the size a little larger than a pistol magazine. Asp also makes zip cuffs that fold down to a little larger than the size of like an Extendo 20-round pistol magazine. And those are a lot easier to carry. In fact, I would never have carried zip cuffs before the new variety came out, and now I can keep them on my carrier, which is really, really convenient, especially when you interop with other agencies. So like, I'm going to snatch somebody, put the habeas corpus on them, and I'm going to give them to another department, put the zip cuffs on them, and then they're gone, they're done. I don't have to worry about them. Don't have to worry about cleaning it. If somebody's all bloody and nasty, zip cuff them. Don't have to worry about cleaning the cuffs. They're really convenient. Alex Seaweed said, would you ever think of joining SWAT? Not again. I did that once. That's a lot of work, bro. That's a lot of work. I wouldn't do that again. And I wasn't real good at it, I'll tell you that much. Listen, when you get called to a barricaded knifeman at 10 o'clock at night, the night of Thanksgiving, so you get done eating dinner, then you get called out 40 minutes from home, you got to put 100 pounds of stuff on, and then stand out in somebody's backyard when it's 30 degrees outside, the night of Thanksgiving, when you'd really rather be at home in bed, you start having like serious misgivings about the whole SWAT thing, right? Really cool to tell people you're on SWAT, not so cool to be in it when the realities of it set in. And the guys that like it, all the respect in the world to them, because if you like it, there's a guy in my department that's, I think he's like 15 years on SWAT. Dude, that's a lot of late nights, early mornings, a lot of cheap gas station coffee. At times you'd rather be asleep. I don't know, man. I wouldn't do that again. It's a lot of work, especially around here. Jonathan Simmons says, what's the best way to get in shape for the police academy? Well, sometimes you get skinny guys that need to get stronger. Most of the time it's you're too fat or you're too out of shape and you can't make the run. That's what gets most people. So figure out what the physical requirements are and then exercise and work at them until you're about 15-20% better than those physical requirements. Then you should be good to go. For most people, it's the run. So you got to get out there and just run as far as you can then stop and run a little further, and then stop and then run a little further, then go home, and keep doing that until you can make the whole run. Mikhail Stefanik says, how would you handle a reserve or auxiliary officer overstepping their boundaries by performing the actions of a normal law enforcement, meaning pulling someone over in their mark squad if they drive in one? Well, everywhere treats reserves or auxiliaries differently. So where I'm at, we have reserves. I think we still have reserves. I haven't seen them in a while. We don't use them a lot. But the reserves are only allowed to work at our shopping mall and city hall. And any case that they come up with that's not a misdemeanor, they have to refer to a full-timer. They can write tickets and stuff like that. But it would be like dealing with anybody else at work, right? Like I'm not their supervisor. I'm just the full-time guy, right? So, hey, this reserve is screwing something up and he's doing something illegal. No, we're not doing that. What do you mean? I mean, we're not doing that today, bro. If I got to put this coffee down, we're going to have problems. And then I go talk to the boss and let my boss talk to their boss and let the problem go deal with it. That's why I'm not one of the bosses, because I don't want to deal with that stuff. I just grab and I go, nope, we're not doing that. And most people listen. In fact, so far, everybody has listened when I've said that. Fred Chandler says, so concealed carry compared to open carry, in my opinion, open carry just brings attention and trouble, and that's why cops are always stopping people. What do you think? I don't know. We don't have open carry here, so it's not a real big issue. Indiana has open carry, and I shop in Indiana all the time, and I very rarely see people open carrying there. And if they are, they're one of two people. They either have like the bulldog holster with the high point in it, so they really don't know what they're doing, or they'll have like a Safariland holster and a duty belt and just a holster and the gun in it, which leads me to believe that they just don't want to have to conceal it. So if you're going to do that, if you're going to have like a retention holster and a good gun, and you're going to get the training for it, and you're going to have it on a good belt, and you're going to do it the right way, then I don't care what you do. If it's not illegal, it's not illegal. I don't care. Honestly, I think open carry should be legal, but not all things that are legal are smart to do, right? Like, you can legally drive a 1,000cc sport bike on the road, but it's probably not the smartest thing in the world to do on a regular basis, because you're going to hurt yourself, right? So, like, we can't have, everything can't be the nanny state. Like, some stuff's not smart, but it can still be legal. We can't make everything illegal, and open carry is legal in some places, and it's not really, I haven't found that it's really that big of an issue. Hello from Greece. Hello. Charles Becker says, my local cops got defunded and I'm being robbed right now. The dispatch said to wait for a social worker to come and de-escalate the situation. What should I do? Probably run away. That's what I would do. A lot of people spamming. Hold on. Daniel Erickson says, what's your go-to coffee at the beginning of shift? Love's gas station. Love's gas station. The truck stop tends to have really good coffee. It stays, it's fresh and hot. Normally you can get it fresh or you can get it hot. You can't get both, but Love's goes through so much coffee at the gas station. It's normally both. It's normally pretty hot and also pretty fresh. So I don't know. In your area might be different, but normally you get coffee from like a big truck stop with lots of trucks at it. Normally you get better coffee. That's been my experience. Judah M says, what's your experience been with state troopers? I really have a lot of experience with state troopers. Buddy of mine got hired about the same time I did. He's an Illinois state trooper. He's one of the defensive tactics instructor at their academy. He's a good dude. It's nice to rib on troopers because they wear the goofy hat, but other than that, they're just doing the same job I am, but on the highway. Most of the time, they're really depressed about all the accidents that they have to take all day. I wouldn't want to do their job, I'm going to be honest with you. Koronowicz official says, are you from Poland? No. My people are from Czechoslovakia. If you've never heard of that before, that's okay. Most people haven't. Mike and Ike says, how do you deal with expressing political views in the work environment? I don't. Everybody at work knows what my political views are because they pretty closely align to theirs because we all have the same experiences all day, every day. So it's not like there's a lot of people out there that are like bucking the trend politically at my work. Why do people spam the comment sections? Mike says, how many instances of identity theft or scamming do you deal with? I don't deal with many of them because most people come up to the front desk with all their paperwork for that. People walk in the front desk all day, every day, 24 hours a day. 3 o'clock in the morning seems to be a real big time for coming in because somebody stole your identity. I don't know why that is, but people do it. I don't deal with it a lot. We occasionally will get somebody, unless I'm stuck on the desk. So sometimes the boss has got to go out, and I happen to be in the station, so I'll sit on the desk for him, be like, yeah, because normally our sergeants deal with that at the front. I deal with it then. Most people that come in for an identity theft report, it's not really identity theft. They're playing a scam where they're like, oh, somebody deposited $1,500 in my account and then took $600 out and it wasn't me. And I'm like, oh, how did they get your ATM card? Oh, my wallet was stolen, but I never reported it. Okay, how did they get the PIN for your debit card? Oh, well, tell you what, you go sit over there, and I'll be back in a couple hours. You think about whether or not you really want to catch a class 4 felony for making a false report. And if you're still there in a couple hours, we'll do this report. If not, no hard feelings. And then I'm like, okay. And I walk away and I'm watching them on the camera, sit down, look around, and then run out the door. That's a lot of my experience with identity thefts. A lot of people just posting the same thing over and over again. Ross Bowie says, if I have a lot of military experience, do I still need to go to college if I want to apply to a federal agency? Most of them, yes. And you should. College is going to open more doors overall in law enforcement than military experience or work experience is going to. You don't need it to get the job, but it's going to open a lot more doors. So if that's a question of whether or not college is going to open more doors, it is. My recommendation is don't spend a lot of money on it because the difference between going to Harvard and being a cop and going to your local community college and being a cop is really, really small as far as what departments think of it. Anthony Jimenez says, what's my opinion on DC Metro Transit Police Department? I have no experience with them at all. Jex says, what's your favorite flavor of Bang? I've never had Bang Energy. I can't deal with the commercials constantly on Instagram and YouTube with the fitness models. It's so cringy and terrible. It makes me want to not drink their product. I've never even tried it. M. Ibram says, is the equestrian mounted officer, can I join in an international equestrian competition? I have no idea. BBP Koo says, hello from Riot City, Portland, Oregon. Says he hopes to move away ASAP. I hope you move away too. So Archangel M127 says, I literally got fired from a security job for taking it overly seriously, i.e., following the written site orders of the letter, like I was told to do so repeatedly. I'm telling you, security is not, unless you're doing a really, really high-end gig, it's not that stressful of a thing. People make it more stressful than it really is. Most security gigs I do dressed pretty much like this. T-shirt or a polo shirt with a jacket that says police on it, and that's pretty much it, man. Like, a lot of them, like, they don't even want you marked as police. They just want somebody there. I do a lot of security gigs where it's just, chinos and a black unmarked polo shirt with all your stuff concealed, and they just want you there in case something happened. Dude, that's an easy gig, and I don't see any reason to make it more complicated than it has to be. David H. says, is Chicago as messed up as the news makes it out to be? No, it's worse. It's significantly worse. Chicago is significantly worse than the news makes it out to be. The suburbs of Chicago, especially the south and western suburbs, are significantly worse than the news makes them out to be. I have traveled to other parts of the country. I've seen what other parts of the country call the ghetto, right? Like, went to Columbus, Ohio, and they're like, "Oh, you can't go to that part of town. That's the ghetto." And I drove over there, and I was like, "This looks like where I live, bro. This isn't that bad. It's not that bad at all, right? Like, it's worse." And sometimes I think that I actually have a higher expectation of bad neighborhoods because of where I live. Or like I go somewhere and people are like, "Oh, you don't want to go to that. Don't go too far off the strip in Vegas. It gets really bad." And I look around and I'm like, "This is bad to you?" It's an entirely different perspective. But yeah, it's actually worse. You'll see articles and it'll be like 47 people shot over the weekend with 12 deaths in Chicago. It's like, so many people get shot and killed here, that they don't even warrant a separate article unless it's a little kid or a very old person. It's just, hey, 47 people are shot, 12 dead. There's not even an article. The names of these people don't even get written in the article that were killed. That's how bad it is. Imagine if you lived in a place where somebody gets murdered and their name doesn't even appear in an article in the local newspaper. That's how bad it is. Jack says, "Do you like dark humor?" Almost exclusively. AJ Martinez says, "Hello from Texas. What's your best advice for FTO training?" If you're going into field training, so you're going to be the trainee, don't do anything except that through the course of when you're in field training. Don't start a new sport. Don't go play softball on the weekends unless it's like an adult league team where it's, you don't even practice. You just show up once a week to do the softball. Like, just do that and don't have two jobs. Don't keep your old job and try to do the police job at the same time. If you're full-time and you're in training, just do that. Charles Becker says, "I think you gave me a ticket a few weeks ago. To be honest, I'm in the Chicago suburbs too, and I was going to my friend's house. Is your name Tom?" Let me tell you something, bro. If I gave you a ticket, I guarantee you it was from an accident if it was a few weeks ago. Because I don't think I pulled someone over and written them a ticket when they didn't slam into another car or a building in like a year and a half. So, no. No, I know you're lying. Because you would remember and you'd be like, "Yeah, so I drove my truck into a garage and then you wrote me a ticket." That's the only circumstances where I would believe that I actually wrote you a ticket. So, Two Guys Talking says, "Are OC spray policies a state thing or a municipality thing? While we're there, your recommendation for a solid OC spray and deployment canister." Okay, so OC spray is almost exclusively an individual police department policy thing. Every agency that has any brains is going to have a policy on every use of force option that they give their people. DefTech makes good can of OC spray. You're going to want something that's a stream for most situations for just like, getting an individual person. You can use Saber Red, makes a good pepper spray, a good law enforcement pepper spray. You can get them in a fog or a cone if you're dealing with kind of more of an unruly crowd situation, or you're running away and spraying it over your shoulder. You might want a cone. But for most applications, we're going to be using a stream. Normally the Mark V, the big like 6-inch tall one is pretty good. It's easy to hang on to. Gives you plenty of spray if you need it. Lots of deployments. You don't have to go buy a new one every time you use it. So those are good options. I don't use pepper spray a lot. I've got some DefTech cone spray and some DefTech stream spray laying around in my duty bag somewhere. It's really good for getting people out of confined spaces. They decide they're going to hold up in a closet and I don't want to have to call a dog out. Just pop a little pepper spray in there and they tend to come out, which is A lot of that is Supreme Court cases, though. A lot of that, well, not Supreme Court cases. A lot of that is court cases allowing us to use it on passive resistors. So if somebody decides they're not coming out of the garbage can after the foot chase, and you think they might have a weapon in there, you can just kind of lift the can lid up a little bit and toss a little pepper spray in there, and they'll be coming out soon enough. Has your beard actually grown longer since the onset of your video? Good God, you're a wolf man. Probably a little bit. Nathan Sturman Productions says, can I get a shout out from you, please? Nathan Sturman Productions. That's the best I got, man. I don't know how shout outs work. Daryl Pragili says, what is one lesson you had to learn the hard way in policing? Well, other than the coffee, let me think. One lesson I had to learn the hard way was don't drive beyond your capabilities or the capabilities of the car, especially if it's a new car and you're not aware of the capabilities. I drove a car backward into a building one time because I lost control trying to catch up with a guy who was pursuing somebody. So two things from that. Before that, I didn't wear my seatbelt a lot, and now I always wear my seatbelt. If I'm driving at any speed that I don't want to hit the dashboard, I wear my seatbelt. And two, I drive a lot slower and a lot more carefully now, because what had happened was there was ice and then snow over the top of it. And I was driving, and to this day, I don't think I really did anything that was against the policy, or I should have been at fault for, but I went around someone on the left, and I had my lights and sirens on, and they turned left in front of me while I was trying to catch up. And I avoided them successfully, but the conditions were so slick, the car went end over end and like spun, and I almost hit a pole, but I managed to go backward into a building. Not a huge amount of damage to the building, not a huge amount of damage to my car, but definitely a wake-up call about being careful while driving and always wearing my seatbelt. Marshall Paul says, I used to patrol on bike during night shift. It was scary. Didn't like it. Switched to patrol car when the opening came about. Oh, on like a motorcycle at night? I don't like riding motorcycles at night at all, let alone at work. Bike might win against a smart car, just saying. I don't know, man. There's smart cars still pretty heavy compared to a motorcycle. Maybe there's a motorcycle out there that would do all right, but you think you're going to hit the front wheel of the motorcycle up against the side of the smart car, or the smart car is going to hit the side of the bike? Like, you don't have any crash protection. The bike might win, but will you? Lyric Music Player says, to advance a career in security, would you recommend to graduate from a police academy? We don't have like self-sponsored police academy. We don't have self-sponsored police academies here. So that's not something we really do, but I know that if you are certified as a police officer here, you can make a lot more money being a security guard. So that might be a viable option for you. Hello from Nebraska. Hello. Hello from Iran. Muhammad Sophie says, hello from Iran. Hello. That's a new one. Haven't seen Iran here. Nathan Sturman Productions says, hi from South Bend, Indiana. Hi. I've been there. The Dominican Bike Messenger says, I don't see police officers that have canine. Do you know why? I don't know why you don't see them. We definitely have them here quite a lot. I have one on the channel, a guy from Dalton. Louis Masucci was on the channel. There's a whole series with him on the YouTube channel here. Guitar Player 6 says, I just realized that an error on my resume that I sent an agency I've already tested with. Nothing major, just a flub the year I graduated. What should I do? Nothing. That's probably not going to be an issue. Unless you're applying for somewhere really worried about your background, like Secret Service, it's probably not, and even then, it's probably not going to be an issue. They'll get your background and your information from your school. They'll get your transcript from your school and look at it and be like, oh, the year's wrong. All right, well, that happens. Marshall Paul says, in Oregon, the feds deputize state/local police for federal charges. Does the procedure change when that happens for the officers? A little bit. So depending on how they work it out administratively, and the administrative stuff is going to depend state to state and agency to agency. All that means is that the feds can take over the case and charge it federally. So local law enforcement, like right now, if I lock somebody up and let's say it was there was also a violation of federal law, I would call whatever agency deals with that federal law. So let's say I go to that domestic and in the basement is 100 kilos of cocaine and a kilo press and a bunch of packaging or whatever. And I'm like, I think this guy's, like, there's cutting material all over. And you're like, I think this guy's buying and cutting and reselling. I wouldn't call the U.S. Attorney's Office. I would call the local officer. You know, for me, I would call the dude from our agency that's on the DEA task force and be like, hey, we just found this. You want to come take a look? And then see if they want to take the case over. And then they would call the U.S. Attorney and charge it under the federal statutes. By deputizing local law enforcement, what that's allowed them to do is the police for the city and the state that are deputized by the feds to charge federally. What really I think is going on there is that lots of places, the local state's attorney office will not charge people for the upcharge of battery to police officer. They just will charge as misdemeanor battery and then drop the charges when it goes to court. So I think what the feds did is they came in and they said, well, we're going to make this person a federal officer. And so if you're an officer of the federal government, they can then charge it as a battery to a federal officer. And that is going to stick. You know, so now the U.S. attorney has the option of charging as a federal felony battery to that police officer during the riot. And I think that's the majority of what's going on there. If somebody knows otherwise, or somebody's there on the ground and knows what's going on, I'm just getting that from the news. I'd be interested to hear. But it's interesting times we're in. Like 8 years ago, everybody was like, federalize the police. And now everybody's like, no, don't federalize the police. You asked for them to be federalized. That's what happens. You federalize the police. Guess what? You're going to get federal charges when you batter them. Toxic Gamer says, does jiu-jitsu help your chances of being a police officer? No, but it helps your chances of staying one longer and not getting injured on the job. Richard the Lionhearted says, if you're a good cop and you witness bad cops, does this make you a bad cop too? No, witnessing something doesn't make you bad. Witnessing something and doing nothing about it makes you bad. So don't do nothing about it. It's just that simple. So Aberdeen Alzmar says, my dad is a homicide detective. He told me when I expressed my interest in getting hired anywhere as a HP, I'm assuming highway patrol, sheriff, or even local PD, that everyone hates the highway patrol. Is that true? I don't think everybody hates the highway patrol. They're just real easy targets with the hats and whatnot. I know there's a difference in many states between highway patrol and state police. And that highway patrol, in some places, they just deal with the highway, and they're basically just out writing tickets all day and taking accidents, and they don't ever do anything else. But that's not my experience here, so I don't know. I don't hate the highway patrol. Never really had bad run-ins with any of them, honestly. Smith Burlidgelow says, so you're okay with sneering people for guns, which are part of the Second Amendment, but cars, which are privilege, it's not okay. No, it's nothing to do with cars. It has to do with being realistic about living in a society. So, we have the Second Amendment in this country, and I support it quite a bit. I think people should be allowed to have firearms. They should be allowed to defend themselves, and it should be a limit on government's power and authority. I also think that after, let's say, you get convicted of robbing someone and taking their car, maybe there should be restrictions on your freedoms from that point forward, right? Maybe as a society, we all get together and we elect people who then make laws saying, we're just not going to allow this anymore. Now, if everybody gets together and agrees that those people, they've served their debt to society and they should be allowed to own firearms again, that's fantastic. Whatever. But everyone doesn't agree on that, and I don't agree on that. And we can disagree on that, and we can still be friends, and I'm okay with it. But yeah, I don't really feel sorry for dudes who have been convicted multiple times of violent felonies that are not allowed to carry guns anymore. Guess what? That's on you. You got arrested and convicted for a violent felony. Now, to the flip side of that, do I think that every felony should be a disqualifier? No, because there's lots of stuff that have been made felonies lately that really shouldn't be felonies, right? Like there's lots of non-violent offenses that are felonies that restrict somebody from owning a firearm. And I don't agree with that, but that's why we vote. And also, cars, we're not talking about cars. We're talking about randomly stopping people under no cause or very little cause by means of a checkpoint. Putting a checkpoint on a road and directing every third or fifth car in when those people in that car have done nothing to grab attention or nothing illegal, there's nothing you can articulate that says this person needs to be stopped and checked, and then stopping and checking that people is not a violation of their right as a car. There's no right to cars. It's their right to move. Like, you're detaining the person. You're seizing that person. You're effecting essentially an arrest. And I think that there should be something more serious than you were the third car to drive down this street to do that. And you know what? There's lots of judges and lots of people that disagree with me. And that's okay. We can disagree on those things. Michael Elliott says, do you think officers should be required to have a certain amount of community service hours to regain their community's trust? No. You know what helps the community's trust? When cops go out and actually do their jobs and manage to arrest the people that are doing bad things to nice people. It's like that's the job. So no, I don't think I need to go out and sweep streets or paint signs or play with puppies or teach children to regain the community's trust, because I haven't destroyed the community's trust. It's people who are not doing their jobs that destroy the community's trust. Why do I have to do community services? And if somebody's out doing the wrong thing, how would doing community service hours regain anybody's trust? Why should you trust someone who's not doing the right thing to start with? Red Green says security guards are still your peers. You don't have to like it, but it's the law. No, not all security guards are my peers. Some of them are. I'll give you some examples. There's a guy that works at the Love's gas station where I get my coffee. He's a nice dude. I go in there, smiles. Hey, how's it going? I'm pretty good. Hey, I heard about all these armed robberies going on, 2 streets over down there. You guys know anything you can tell me about that? Well, it's supposedly a little burgundy car. So if there's 3 dudes in a little burgundy car looking suspicious in the parking lot, give us a call. All right, cool. Thanks. Good to know. Dude's squared away. Not the cleanest uniform or anything. Not the most expensive gear. Pretty squared away. No problems. That's one of my peers. That's a person that is trying to do the same job I am. He's just making sure everybody at the gas station, the gas station is safe when they're there. It's a big gas station, several acres of gas station in his little gas station area. He just wants to make sure people aren't getting robbed. The flip side of that, the guy that works in the housing complex that constantly calls wanting me to run license plates for him to see if the people who are parking their cars in the housing complex live there so that he can have them towed because they didn't buy a sticker from the housing complex to park there, he's not my peer. He's not my peer. He is an overzealous manager's assistant. And I don't have to like him. Dylan Cartwright says, have you ever reported another officer for alleged misconduct that you've witnessed? I throw any of that right up the chain of command. Yes, that's happened. When I see something stupid happen, I tell pretty much everybody about it. And I'm a field training officer. When it happens with one of my trainees, it's my job to run that up the chain. And if necessary, get them fired. And I don't have any qualms about that at all. Not at all. I don't understand people that do. Was I in the military? No. JD Chapman says, take a situation and squash it with no regard for the person they are squashing, either physically or with legal boundaries for years to come. Pathetic. Hold on. I need to read that in the proper voice. Take a situation and squash it with no regard for the person they are squashing. Dude, get a life. That is not what I said at all. You're hearing what you want to hear, not what I'm saying. I didn't know that listening comprehension was a thing. People having poor listening comprehension until I started doing YouTube. It actually makes me really sad for society. There's people that can't even listen to what somebody's saying. I understand if you're bad at reading, but you can't even listen to what somebody's saying? Dude, piss off. Martin T says, thoughts on getting a job with the Game Commission or Park Service as a law enforcement officer like game warden or park rangers. I looked into that for a while and ended up finding a job before I could get an opportunity to get into, so I looked into that for a while. I wanted to do at the federal level, fish and game, but one, that's a dangerous job. You're out in the middle of nowhere. There aren't a lot of those jobs. In some places, like in Illinois, they pay less than the normal job. So a trooper makes less than the Illinois Conservation Police. But the Illinois Conservation Police have a lot more like training and risk. And you got to really love it to want to do that job. A lot of people asking the same question over and over again. Adam Harrington says, what do you think of police explorers? We have an explorer post here. Before the corona, we had regular meetings, and I was at them all the time. Had some live streams on Instagram, which unfortunately weren't saved before Instagram automatically saved live streams. Fortunately, you can't watch them now, but hopefully in the future we'll be able to do more of them where I do classes for the police explorers, and I like that program. It's cool. Rain Autumn put $4.99 in the donut fund. Thank you very much. It says, how different are college atmosphere police academies versus paramilitary? Would you know the pros and cons? So when I went to the University of, what was it called? The Police Training Institute at the University of Illinois. I said it backward. And they weren't really paramilitary. It was more of a college style. They tried to be paramilitary, but it just kind of came off as laughable when I was there. And I don't get the whole break them down and build them up thing. It never seems to be done really right. The Illinois State Police, they do a paramilitary police academy. And I think it makes people a lot prouder of the job and of the stuff that, the equipment that they're using on the job. I don't know that it makes people better cops, but the state police always look pretty squared away. They're very, very persnickety about their uniforms. And guys that go to the state police academy, at least when they first come out, seem a lot more persnickety about their uniforms, making sure everything's perfect and lined up. And they look better coming out of it. So there's an advantage to it. Sim Tard says, does 45 ACP have trouble piercing cars? No, 45 ACP doesn't have trouble going through cars. You're using hollow point rounds. You know, almost anything will make it through the door of a car or the back glass. But going from one end to the other, using 45 ACP ball rounds, what you get with that is penetration from oblique angles. So hitting a trunk like this and the round going through, that's, you know, that 45 ACP does better because there's more mass behind it to push through objects and not deflect. But I don't know, with handgun rounds, man, once they hit a hard object, whatever they do after that might as well be magic, because you could fire 5 rounds right near each other and have all 5 of them go different directions after they go through something. Dylan Cartwright says, how often do you get briefed on case law? All the time. Every time something new comes out that might affect our job, there's memos sitting on the desk and there's articles and you know, monthly trainings that it comes out constantly with new case law. Some of it gets made way more of than it needs to. People thought Gant was the end of the world. Oh my God, now we can't search cars when we arrest somebody in the car lane. That's not what it says. It says you need a better reason than that. It's not that big a deal. And people made a big deal about Gant for like 3 years before they realized it was going to change almost nothing. How long have you worked as a police officer? 15 years. Gabriella Cruz says, what police car do you have? We use 2017 Ford Explorer currently. Daniel Simone says, how do you put cuffs on a person with a shirt? The shirt always curls up and gets in the way. Yeah, you noticed that, huh? Yeah, you gotta push the sleeves up a little bit before you apply the cuffs. Or it gets janky. That happens. Sometimes they get caught up in the handcuffs. I mean, that's real life, man. JP Strong says, when I listen to Scanner, sometimes sounds distorted. How do you understand what they're saying? Do build ear to it eventually. It's like learning a new language or a new dialect. If you go down south, you might have trouble with understanding what people say. You go to New York, you might have a little trouble understanding what people say. After a while, you know, you catch the slang. 10 codes and all that, it's just slang. You figure it out. Somebody asked what radio I use, and then someone else, so Tranquil 1337 says he uses a Motorola APX 7000. You know more about it than I do. I'd have to go take that out of the case and look at it to see what radio it is. Marshall Paul says, Tommy, can you share with us how to balance between protecting the Brotherhood versus turning in fellow officer on illegal activities? I'm always told to look the other way. If you're being told to look the other way when someone's doing something wrong that you work with, then you're working at the wrong place, or you're hanging out taking advice from the wrong people. I'm getting lots of the same comment over and over again. We might have to call it. It's been an hour and a half. We're going to take one more because he's from the UK, and I love what the British police hop on. Baby Carrot says, hi, I'm a British prisons officer. In the UK, I want to become a police officer in the USA. What do I have to do to become one? Well, first, in most places in the US, you'd have to become a citizen. Some will allow you to get a green card and come to the country and work as a cop. Some police departments, most places, you have to be a U.S. citizen. So you'd have to work on the process of getting U.S. citizenship first. It's a bit of a process, and you'd have to definitely do it the right way if you want to work at a police department someday. And I think that's about it. Yeah, I get a lot of repeats, and we've already been on for an hour and a half. So to the 180 of you that are watching this live, thank you very much for stopping by. Don't forget the Olight flash sale going on tonight. Down in the description of this video is all of the particulars for that. We've got the police equipment giveaway next week. Also probably putting out the ass flashlight video as soon as I get a good thumbnail down for it. It should be up on Patreon right now. In the future, we've got the 221B Max Dry Vest, the new version of it. It's got some like rubberized material on it that keeps it from swishing around too much underneath your vest, keeps the hot spots down. So be looking out for that in the near future. Tactically Suited sent me some patch panels, and it's a reflective rubberized police patch. I don't know where it's at. We're in here right now, but it's retro reflective, which is really cool. It the stuff doesn't wear off. Like, this is not like screen printed on where if you scratch it enough it'll wear off, because it's embedded in the rubber, and it reflects at almost like 89 degrees. You can still see reflectivity from the patch if you shine a light at it, which that's pretty cool. And it's Velcro backed, attaches to just about anything. What else we have coming up in the future? Lots of stuff. We got the Pursuit video coming up, and I'm always looking for new video ideas. I got a whole phone full of video ideas, trying to blast through them and get as much content out to you guys as possible. It looks like somebody put money in the donut fund, so I guess we'll take one last thing for them before we sign off. No, I'm not going to be able to find it. There's probably 30 minutes of people commenting the same thing over and over again. Try to find this super chat here. I don't want people feeling like I stole their money. Hey, you guys are having a hell of a conversation. Blaze put $5 in the donuts fund. Says, love your channel. Hope we do more live streams like this in the future. If you like this, 2 ways to encourage more of it. Next time we do it, throw money in the donut fund. You know, throwing money in a problem always tends to encourage people to do more of things. Also, comment on this video and like it and subscribe and tell your friends about it and share it, because that makes me want to make more stuff. So until next week, you guys be safe. Take care of each other. Sorry, I can't edit that out. It's a live stream.